What's next when it comes to dash cameras? I mean, let's go back, way back to when we had SD cards. Those things got corrupted all the time. We had to format them. And then we moved to cloud-based dash cameras. Well, what's next? That's what we're talking about next, right here.
Welcome to the Trucking Risk and Insurance Podcast.
Bobbi Farrow, welcome to the Trucking Risk and Insurance Podcast.
Oh.
Bobbi, can you please introduce yourself and Netradyne?
Yes, thank you for having me today. My name is Bobbi Farrow. I manage our insurance channel at Netradyne. Netradyne is the next generation of dash cameras. So we're excited to share what that means and how insurance companies leverage a lot of this data today to kind of change the industry and make it better.
Cool.
That is cool. And you said you're in charge of the insurance part? How did you say it?
Yeah, and the insurance channel. So I help manage the insurance channel. So my primary role and responsibility in Netradyne is to work with anybody in the insurance industry that wants to leverage our data. So from insurance brokers to insurance companies, I help manage and put together programs for them.
Cool.
Damn,
Oh.
and you don't know, Johnny and I, we both formerly worked for insurance companies from the safety
Yes.
point of view.
Man,
Yes.
oh, awesome.
So we are familiar with working with third parties in this type of way. I didn't
Yeah.
know Netradyne actually had somebody that was 100% responsible for that.
Yeah, that's cool. That's great.
Yeah, that's where I focus on.
Well, cool. What might, if I was an insurance company, what assistance might I expect from you and your department?
Yeah, so our department we have several of us that are key players that really help to facilitate these different programs that we put together. So coming from the industry, you guys probably know that this is very new. They've been collecting data, but to actually start to collect it and to put dollars towards it and
Mhm.
to actually start to use it in type of underwriting and policies, it is new. And so we have a team that helps support this. So I go out and I find the companies that are looking and interested in that. And then we have a team that we have a customer service manager that supports an operations manager that supports all these different programs that we're bringing in because we want them to be successful. So we're helping them with the things that we've learned over the last few years on how to do this and how to do it in a successful way.
Wow.
Yeah. Pretty exciting. I think you have to, one thing let's start back. Let's go back to who Netradyne is and what we do. I think this is really important. And then I think that story will help you guys understand why and how insurance companies are leveraging our data different than they have with other companies previously. And why I say we're the next generation of dash cameras. I think that's important because we're doing things different than other cameras. So if you look at the evolution of dash cameras, they went from like these accident recorders on an SD card, right? And they would just pull and look at that time and space. Then they evolved to being trigger-based, right? Oh, there's something that triggers the camera and it captures that moment in time. And that moment in time is what is shared with fleet managers to review safety, behavior, risk. And then those are the same moments that are shared with insurance companies to say, hey, what is the risk profile of this driver, of this fleet overall, given these different moments in time that we capture? Netradyne is different because we analyze 100% of the drive. We are not trigger-based. So think of our camera as an eyeball and brain in the cab with the driver, capturing everything as it goes. So it's not just capturing these risky moments, but it's also capturing all the really good behavior of drivers. And when you look at a profile of professional drivers, 80% of the time, they're doing the right thing. And I think that's a really important stat to understand, and it's an important data point when you're analyzing risk. Especially for fleets that are trying to tell a story, right? If you ever get into a nuclear verdict, now we've got a different story we're telling because we can tell by the data how risky is our fleet or how safe is our fleet. So it's a new data point that we haven't had before.
I was going to say one of the things that we've always had from the trucking industry side is that negative approach. Oh, everybody's watching me. Oh, you're just picking on the bad stuff. But hearing you talk about how 80% of the guys are doing it right, is a huge success story, and it needs to be shared. It needs to be pulled up because even with success stories, there's learning opportunities that can be utilized from there to go, okay, this is how these guys are doing it. Let's learn how this is. Let's incorporate this into our training program so we can have 95% of our drivers who are doing it right.
You're exactly right, John. And that's what we're seeing within our fleets. So when our fleets are, one thing is it's changing the way that the driver utilizes the camera. So today, these drivers look at cameras, and I call them legacy cameras. They're only looking at the bad moments, right? They're capturing the gotcha. Oh, we gotcha. And that's how the drivers interact with these cameras. I was at an IFTA event recently, and they had their drivers of the year, right? They're getting rewarded for being accident free. And I would ask these drivers, like, how do you interact with your cameras? And these guys have had no accidents. They are the top drivers, and they were saying, other than it telling us that we need to create space, it's just kind of this noisy thing on there. But we know it can exonerate us if something happens. So I showed them, like, what if the camera could do this? And I showed them the difference of our camera to these legacy cameras, and their minds are blown. Their spouses were there, and they're like, yes, they need to see how great you are. And I think that's the difference. And if you can get drivers to engage the way that we are around this positivity, that's where we see the change. Right? So quick little study we did. We looked at fleets that had implemented our system in the first 12 months. And we saw that there's about 125 to 175 point increase, right, in our green zone score, we call it. Everybody has these scoring, right, that we score drivers and fleets on. In that 125 to 175 was the average that we saw in that increase. Now, if you look at that, for every 50 points, there was an increase. There's a 14 to 22% accident per million mile reduction. So there is a straight ROI amongst this scoring and getting these drivers engaged and getting that increase. Now, when we looked at it, the interesting part is that everybody, doesn't matter what camera you put in, is going to get some type of an increase. You're going to get that first dump because it's like, oh, I didn't know, right? I put a camera in my car, and I saw that I had run 37 stop signs one day. I didn't know that I rolled through every stop sign, right? And so I think we pick up behaviors that we just didn't know about. So cameras can help kind of highlight some of those behaviors, or just the fact that, oh my gosh, I have a camera in my car. I'm not touching my face. I'm 10 and 2. I'm paying attention. Right? So every camera company is going to get that first jump. The difference that we saw is in that second jump is around this positivity you're talking about. It's the gamification. It's now that I've engaged drivers that they're like, hey, where do I rank in the fleet? We call them driver stars, where they actually earn positive stars that actually give them bumps in their points. Did I get those stars? Am I doing the behaviors that give me those stars? Those behaviors are leading to better driving behaviors. So that gamification is what it actually advances us above any other camera out there because of that ability to engage that driver.
One of the things I see here right away is there's a phrase I use quite frequently. No driver wants to be a bad driver. They just don't know how to be a good driver. And unfortunately, some of the training that is out there that motor carriers provide their drivers is, don't do this. Don't do this and you'll be a good driver. Don't do this and you'll be a good driver. However, by sharing the good behaviors with people, it's no longer, don't do this. It's, no, do this and you'll be a better driver. Do these types of practices. Be aware of your behaviors. Be cognizant of what you're doing on a daily basis, and you can change your behavior. Just as you'd mentioned, looking at the video and going, oh my God, I was rolling stop signs and I didn't even realize it. I thought I was coming to a complete stop, but I wasn't. So learning that, and then you now are cognizant of that fact, you can start to apply yourself to go, okay, I'm going to come to a complete stop and I'm going to count to at least 2 or 3 before I move ahead. So little things like that, which can really make a big difference, and learning from other people that have good behaviors.
That's right. We had a driver with AIM. I was with Ron Burke, who runs the AIM program. They have our cameras in there. And we were in Indianapolis together, and he told me a story. And I said, this is our why. And this is why we do what we do. And this is, and let me just, basically they had a driver that one of our driver stars is if you move over for the Scots Law, you earn a star. That star gives you bumps in your point. So I had a driver, he's a pretty decent driver, and he was driving up in, I think it was the hills of Virginia, and he was coming around a curve, and there was a disabled car. So he moved over to get his points. No other reason than that. He just wanted to get his points, right? The gamification. As he moved over, a lady came running out from the car, from behind the car, and she was trying to commit suicide by trying. Because he moved over, he missed her. And he was able to pull over. He actually called the medical services.
Yep.
They came out and they were able to help her. He saved a life that day.
Wow.
And he came to his safety manager that day and he goes, I never understood why I would pull over for that, other than I was getting my star. I now get it. I get the why. I get why you're asking me to create space. I get why you're asking me to move over.
Sure.
I get why you're asking me to slow down. And he went from this really good driver to this incredibly great driver because he now understands the why. And that, I think, is the difference with data. If we can start to provide deeper insights to our drivers to understand why we're doing this, then we can get that change. And that change, getting that engagement is so important because you will never lower your claims. You'll never lower your accidents. You're never going to lower any of that without having those drivers engaged. And so like insurance companies love that because if we can engage drivers, we can provide the data that we're showing. They can leverage that information to be able to provide better policies, better premiums to the industry as a whole, which they have to do, right? Because they're losing money. So they have the only way to change is to leverage all this great data that we have that is actually highlighting driver behavior differently.
Well, and that driver who learned to drive differently, to drive better, will also become an advocate and tell all the other drivers that he runs into, mostly in the fleet, of course, of holy shit, you got to understand, I learned this, and then the why.
Yeah. And he learned it from a carrot rather than a stick, right?
Yes.
He learned it differently. And that was really important, I think, because it's a different way of learning, which then changes behavior.
I got a question for you, Bobbi. And of course, aren't unscripted questions the best? One of the current problems with dash cams is that they create the legacy dash cam. They create a lot of false reports. A car cuts the truck off. The truck driver does an outstanding job of avoiding a crash, but that becomes an alert that the safety department has to review.
Right.
Is Netradyne different?
We are. I'm so glad you asked because I think that's one of the big differentiator for us. So within Netradyne, we have what's called edge computing. So remember I said, think of the camera as an eyeball and brain in the cab with the driver analyzing. It's analyzing in real time. So what that does is, like, for your example, you hear a lot of the, the following distance alerts. You're following too close, but it's actually a car that merged in front of our driver. Well, ours actually brings causality. So it's able to say, hey, there's a following distance alert, but it was actually caused by a car that merged in front of the driver. So it's not the driver's fault. And then it actually can do a bunch of its fancy calculations and analyze multiple objects at a time and say, okay, now based on the speed of traffic, the weight of the vehicle, everything around it, the driver could have created space and didn't. Then we can put that to the driver's fault. Or we can say, hey, the driver had a following distance alert, the car merged in front of him, but guess what? The driver actually created a really nice pocket of space there and reacted to that in a way that we like. Let's give him a driver star for that. Let's reward him for behavior. So that causality is really important because if you have a lot of a noise to those drivers and it's not accurate, that's where you're going to lose a lot of those actually engaging and utilizing this as a tool and getting that behavior change. And so we are different that way. Our alerts are at a 98.7% accuracy rate or higher in those alerts. And that's really important because if you don't have that, that's tough. One, to analyze risk, or two, to get those drivers to listen.
Say that stat again. Your alerts are how accurate?
98.7%.
So does that mean your AI is smarter?
Our AI is very smart. It is smart. I think we have, I can't even remember the stat. I'll have to get it for you guys, but you have to keep in mind, because we analyze the whole drive, that is all feeding into our AI. It's not just these moments or parts of the drive that's feeding into the AI, 100% of the drive. And so it's just making our AI smarter. And then we have clients that are very, very large that are running through the cities and the towns and the suburbs that are just making it even smarter. It's not just straight roads anymore. So
Mm. Cool.
And
Yeah.
one of the negatives I hear often about dash cams is
Yep.
that they are producing so much information
Yep.
that is false. Now somebody has to review that false
Yeah.
info,
Yep.
and that costs money. Or
Yep.
else
Yeah.
the attorneys of the world will say
Mhm.
in court, of course, that you had all this information and you failed to act upon it.
Mhm.
I like the
That's
fact that
right.
you're sorry.
Yeah, I have actually heard from multiple companies that tell me they have to hire somebody to validate videos
Mhm.
with
Mhm.
competitors, and that is
Yes.
not the case with us. You do not have to
Right.
do that.
Cool.
Yeah.
Good.
But you're
No.
you're right. You have to be able to tell your story. And when we give, because I'll hear that a lot. Like Netradyne, you give way too much data. How am I going to act on it? I'm going to have to hire multiple people to be able
Mhm.
to analyze and understand it. But the idea here is that I don't want you to have to hire
Mhm.
anybody else to do it because I'm doing all the work for you.
Yeah.
I'm providing you the insights that you need to act on. I'm telling you exactly who you need to be talking to in your fleet and what they need to be doing and changing. And then on top of that, I'm actually giving you reports. We have a really cool report we rolled out that's called our fleet safety report. And what this report is done is it gives a year overview of the fleet. And it shows the fleet.
Mm.
Here's the total number of minutes we've analyzed. Here's your percentage and all the things that you're doing and
Oh,
your
wow.
compliance level. So keep in mind, one of the things that are different with us is every company out there will push alerts. We all do it, right? We
Yep.
all send those alerts. The problem is you don't know what those alerts really mean. If I send you 5 stop sign alerts, you don't really know how many stop signs did you see. Did you see 10 or 100?
Mhm.
That's a
Mhm.
different story, right? We actually provide those insights. So we give you not just the number of alerts, but how compliant a driver is within those alerts. And all of that goes into our scoring system. So it's a very intuitive scoring system. So that compliance level, we can provide that information on all the different things we look at from a fleet level. So I can tell you this fleet's 90% compliant in speeding. They're 99% compliant in stop signs. So we can give that type of insight. We provide that report so that the fleet can give it to their insurance broker and have those conversations as part of their profile when they're going to their insurance renewals. And it's
Well,
valuable information.
well, and I was going to say, it can even come in handy in the event of a court case as well, to be able to say, not only do we have this data, but we have it analyzed, and here's the report to be able to show how compliant we are. So that can be impressive versus the people that are going, well, we have this many stop sign runs, but yeah, we're not sure how many we actually stop for.
Right. Yeah. It's totally flipping the script and telling a whole
Yeah.
new story in those
Yeah.
situations. Yeah.
Well,
'cause
and the other part I heard you say, Bobby, was that like I think safety departments do a terrible job of selling their excellence to insurance companies to get that
Yeah.
better rate.
Mhm.
What I heard you say is you're giving the safety departments the data to better tell their story about compliance and how safe they truly are.
Yep. It's exactly what we're doing. We saw a gap there and I feel like we're doing more than checking a box that it's a dash camera. And I kept
Right.
hearing that all the
Right.
time. Like we get to check a box and we might see some rate change. We might get some credit for it. And I said, we're doing more than checking a box. So I want to tell your story. And so this is version 1 of doing that, of telling that story. And we've had a lot of underwriters look at it. They're giving us a lot of feedback right now for version 2 on it. But I think it's something that all of our fleets should be leveraging and utilizing so that we can actually start to have a true risk profile.
And I've talked to many safety people in the insurance business, and they agree with this statement that I made up years ago that these safety interviews that go on with the safety rep from your insurance company greatly affect your insurance policy renewal by somewhere in the 20% range. So, yeah, if I'll just make up these numbers, but if your insurance premium was 100 grand, which would be really good.
Per truck. Yeah.
Yeah.
If it was 100 grand, a bad report from the insurance rep could add 10 points to that.
Mhm.
But conversely, a really good report gives the underwriter a reason to reduce your rate and get it below that 100 grand by up to about 10 percentage points. Well, that's a 20-point swing.
Yeah.
It's a
So
big deal.
Sure.
what you're giving me or what you're giving safety professionals is huge.
Hmm.
Yep. And it is because they can pull it quarterly, they can pull it annually. It's super easy. They do it right from their portal. So it's not like they have to go and have us compile it. We've made it very
Right.
simple for them to access, and because I want them to use it.
Yep. Well, and I was going to say, having what we're seeing today with the insurance market getting into a real-time user-based approach, this
Mhm.
technology is huge for them to be able to say, look how we're performing today. And then a quarter from now, wow, we've made some more improvements. 6 months from now, look, way big more improvements, is going to have a now effect on your insurance premiums. And it's only a matter of time before everybody's going to be into this process. It's just going to be a no-brainer. All insurance companies will get there one day. Why not be ahead of the curve? Every time we get some new technology out there, those that are ahead of the curve are the ones winning early on.
That's right. And you have insurance techs today that are actually taking in the data. They actually access
Mhm.
it via API or webhook, and they're
Yep.
already starting to analyze it and leverage some of it to be able
Yep.
to analyze the risk of their fleets, which is exciting. And then we
Sure.
have some, even our teams will support where the insurance company will set different types of KPIs or coachings, and we'll have our whole customer service team supporting our fleets in those programs to be sure that they're successful in that. And so it's
But
been really successful and exciting to see because
Cool.
you're seeing that shift and that change of leveraging this data, which is so important.
Yeah. Big time.
what I heard you say early in the interview was that it's your job to work with the insurance people, to educate them, to coach them, to help them understand the reports and everything that they're getting so that they can best use it.
Mm.
That's right. Yep. I spent a lot of my time focused on that. Another one we should actually talk about too is our first notice of loss. This is brand new. It just came out. And so everything we kind of talked about before, like the alerts and all, do a great job at frequency, right? We see that we can change that frequency by changing that behavior. The other part we wanted to start kind of dabbling in is the severity. And one of the things that we saw we could do that with was with our first notice of loss. So if there's an event or a probable accident, um, we have within 120 seconds, the fleet has access to that information um, that quickly. So you can have that information available on site. And what we did is we went and interviewed multiple claims adjusters, and we just asked them, what's your must have to open a claim? And then what is your wish list? Like if you had a wish list, and they gave me about 60 data points. So we took that back to the team, and the team said, you know what, we have 16 of these available today. So they just rolled out version 1 of our FNOL. And what it includes is these 16 data points from like the location to the driver's name to there's all different things in there. And it actually includes the video in that. So within that 120 seconds, the fleet has access to that link. They can share that, and there's all different things they can customize. Maybe they just want it viewable and not downloadable. Maybe they only want to share the outward version and not the inward cab, so they can adjust some of that and make those quick little changes there, and they can share that link. And so that link, and then they can share those additional data points that all are within that FNOL. And so that is pretty exciting because we can get that information so quickly to the right people to be able to take action on it. Very, very quickly, which is really exciting. And so that just rolled out, and version 2 is going to come out with some even additional great, of those different data points, which is exciting to include things like weather. How cool would that be? What was the weather?
Oh, yeah.
So things like that are all coming soon, which is exciting.
Cool.
And I'm not a mathematician, but even I can figure out 120 seconds is like less than 2 minutes. Well, it is 2 minutes, but
Yeah.
you said it's available that quickly. So in less
Yeah.
than 2 minutes, a probable crash alert has been sent out.
That's right.
Takes me longer than that to get the phone call from the driver to say, hey, I've been involved in an incident here. And,
Yeah. And they have access to see that and view that video all within their portal, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Bobbi,
Cool.
as we're wrapping up, is there another topic that we need to address?
We talked.
So many that I wanted to get to, but I didn't have a chance.
Yeah. I do actually step back a little bit and just talk about our green zone score because it is so important, and it's a way that insurance companies and fleets can actually analyze and manage their fleets. So any legacy camera out there, we all have scoring, and either
Hmm.
it's high or it's low, and it
Right.
ticks up or it ticks down. It doesn't really matter. And all of that is based off the alerts, and you can actually adjust sometimes the alerts like weight to the score. Netradyne's is totally different than that. It's a live intuitive score. It goes up and down based on the driver's day. So the driver will drive 30 minutes and that will generate their score. And then based on how well they're driving throughout the day, they're compliant, right? We're bringing in that compliance level. So it doesn't matter what route they're on. I don't care because it levelizes all of the routes because of the compliance that we're bringing in. And that goes up and down throughout the day. The good things they're doing, the driver stars, it goes up. And then if they have an alert, it can go down. But it moves throughout the day, and then it gives them a score at the end of the day. That is different because it is able to understand and analyze the risk of the driver throughout the day. It's not just ticking up or ticking down and then giving the static score.
Mm.
That scoring has been able to really highlight the risk of the fleet and the probability of an accident. So we did a bunch of studies on this scoring, and we found that fleets that are 850 or higher are 30% less likely to get into an event.
Oh, wow.
Fleets that fall under the 600 are risky fleets, and your event accident probability is going to go way up.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so with that, we're able to understand, we help fleets understand what is your appetite of risk and
Right.
where do you want to be? And then we help them get there, based off of coaching drivers, engaging drivers. And one of the things we found is that it's interesting is if we figure out what is your fleet goal, which we always push for 850 or higher. It goes up
Right.
to 1,000, but they can
Oh,
actually
wow.
go over 1,000 with their driver star points, right? So
Cool.
what we found is that there's a way to coach drivers differently because if you can take that score and say, hey, this is our fleet goal. Our fleet goal is
Mhm.
850. And we have virtual coaching, so it goes to the driver's phone. It shows them, hey, here's your most severe alert this week. It's a video of the driver actually doing that alert. Here's some
Okay.
additional examples. Here's where you rank in the fleet, and here's where you could rank if you change
Mhm.
these behaviors, right?
Sure.
Really important. Takes 1 to 2 minutes for drivers to watch. It's all documented in the portal, right? So
Perfect.
now the drivers are getting these coachings. If they're hitting the fleet goal, they don't ever have to be coached face to face. That face to face coaching can be saved for escalation and recognition. And we can leverage the technology to do a lot of this heavy lifting. And what it's doing is it's engaging drivers. It's changing the way that they look at safety and the way that they interact with the safety culture within the fleet. So it's pretty awesome to see, but it also allows insurance companies to leverage that
Mhm.
data and be able to utilize that coaching at an arm's length. Hey, turn
Sure.
on your virtual coaching. Let's do the in-cab coaching and get those. We have voice activated in-cab coaching. So if I'm driving too fast, it says please slow down. If I'm too close, create space. So it has this in-cab coaching. If I'm distracted, it tells me you're distracted. Put down your phone.
Mhm. Mhm.
So those by leveraging technology and utilizing this coaching, we are engaging drivers, but we're also giving tools to insurance carriers at an arm's
Yeah.
length that they can leverage and use as well to get the results that we're looking for.
Cool.
Wonderful. That's Netradyne. So I'm assuming that you're encouraging people to reach out to you because I'm going to put your contact
Really?
info in the show notes down below so they can reach out to Bobbi Farrow at
Yep.
Netradyne. Bobbi, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Yes. Thank you.
Guys. It was great to be here. Thank you so much.
If you would like some more info on what's happening over at Netradyne, please reach out to Bobbi. Her contact info is in the show notes down below. Thanks so much. That's it for this week. Trucking Risk and Insurance Podcast. We are out of here.